Hey everybody, this is Jim from the Pain PT. Thank you for being here today. I've got a special guest today, a success story, which I love to bring to you guys. I got Tom on the line. Tom, how you doing?
Doing well this morning, thank you.
Awesome. We just talked off air about how helpful these stories can be to people who are listening. So I'm looking forward to you sharing in, your journey here. And yeah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'd say the main thing for me, the main thing I've struggled with is migraine. And it's kind of, thankfully, it's the only mind body symptom I've had. But I am 56 right now. And it started for me when I was about 24, 25. So I've heard some people that have struggled their whole life, but for me, that wasn't the case. As I trace it back, I think what happened with me about that time was I started owning a business and I got married and I had a child and just everything all at once. It was just such a heavy time and such a sharp contrast to the way I'd been living before. And so I think I literally just kind of overloaded my senses or just ability to cope. And so I think until that time, I don't feel like I ever struggled with those kind of things.
Yeah,
Uh,
and then that's obviously kicked off. Did the migraines kick off like intermittently, or how did they come on when you first started having them?
Yeah, when I first started having them, they were every 7 to 10 days, every 2 weeks, and we could immediately trace it back. It'd be like if I get one on a Wednesday, I could think back to Tuesday, and it was just so easy to see. Like, of course, that day was so stressful. This happened, that happened. It was really traceable and really trackable. And I was really fortunate because I could just take two Excedrin migraine and I would be good to go. And then, as I got older, as the journey progressed, I started to have to take more medicine, more Excedrin migraine. And then when I was probably 40 or 44, after about 20 years, the Excedrin migraine didn't work. So at that point, I went to a neurologist and they prescribed sumatriptan, and that was just like a wonder drug for me. It completely wiped everything out. And then after about 1 or 2 years, that stopped working. And the more medication I took, the more headaches I would get. So it'd give me this really nice relief, but then I would start to get what I've learned later was medication overuse headaches. And so one thing I was going to mention is that, I've put for my whole life of getting headaches, I've always tried to research and just look for different ways and to try and escape these things. I never wanted to settle for it. And the one thing I've never seen in all of the chat groups and Facebook pages and all the different things, I have yet to come across someone that has successfully used medication. It just feels as if it's just this rabbit hole, and you can just see hundreds of I've switched to this, I've tried that, this worked, and then it didn't. And I really remember just thinking like, wow, there's no sustainable pharmaceutical route. And
Mhm.
so I think that was one of the things that really drove me into looking at non-pharmaceutical options.
Yeah, so up to, most of the time of the duration of these migraines, you were treating them very traditionally, right, with the
Mhm.
medications. You had no idea around. Did you have idea of stress at the time, or did that not enter
I
your mind?
Yeah, I did, but the only stress I knew was the obvious stress, the kind of thing that, anyone would say, well, of course, like this happened, that was huge. And so that's what I tracked it to. What I've learned so much through this work that I've been doing with you is the kind of stress that's not as recognizable, just the stuff that I carry every day, the ways that I used to cope that served me very well, but I didn't realize that just how much I was carrying until I started doing the work and
Yeah.
really,
And when did you find this work? I can't remember. When did you first come across it?
yeah. I think it was just about a year and a half ago. And what happened was when I was about 50, that's the first time I really turned my back on the pharmaceutical world. And what I really did is I dove headlong into like the nutrition world. So keto for migraines and elimination and cutting things out. And I had some success, but still, up until about a year and a half ago, I still would still get migraines no matter how, when I cleaned up my diet so tight, and then I still got migraines. I just, that's, I think, what led me to this. And I think, I'd probably seen curable for 4 or 5 years, but I just sort of never looked into it. And then, yeah, about a year and a half ago, I think like July of 2024, I finally signed up for curable groups. And then from there, I got some really good information, some stuff that really helped me.
Mhm.
And then I don't know if I've ever told you this before, but someone said somatic tracking, Jim Prusik. And that was how I looked at your YouTube. And then I started watching that and just sort of seeing, just really starting to understand a lot of, not through your somatic tracking, but just through some of your other things, all the stress that I was carrying, all of the tools that I had developed that, as you say, were helpful at another time, but they just ran out of being helpful, and I've started to learn about downstream effects and people pleasing and perfectionism. Um, I so yeah, so that would be kind of my introduction to this work.
Yeah, so we found curveballs, you dove and did the groups.
Hmm.
You found my work through somatic tracking, started up
Hmm.
with that. And then I think you joined up on the groups I was doing at the time. Is that right?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've done the daily audio for probably a year and a half now, and I've done the weekly group for maybe 9 months to a
Okay.
year on that. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, take the audience through the journey. So as you transition to the mind body understanding, right, and away
yeah,
from all the medications, away from uh,
yeah,
what's helped you, I guess, if we get right to the point, what were the
yeah,
things for you personally that helped you?
yeah. Well, for me personally, one thing I shared this with you, and it's pretty unorthodox, but just listening to your daily audios every day. And the unorthodox piece is that I delete them as soon as I hear them. Because being the kind of person I am, which is a hyper fixer, trying to get to the bottom of everything and just always I'll hear something that you say and oh, I'm not going to forget that. I'm going to go back to that. And I just realized that I was fumbling over myself in my recovery.
Mm.
And so I've learned, people have talked to me like, hey, what's the hack? Like, what's the way that you got rid of your migraines? And I just tell them, I say, there's no hack. You just have to listen every day, and of course, I don't mean that every day, but I'm not trying to be rigid, but meaning for me, it's just been a daily 8 to 12 minute relearning, being patient with myself, and just things that you'll say that just stick with me. In today's daily audio, you talked about stop living from the back foot. And just little sayings that I'll be like, hey, like that's what I was doing in that situation. And there's things that you probably said to me or said to us 5 months ago that it might not have stuck at that point. I might not have been ready to hear it. And so I've really tried to just open myself to just daily, a little bit at a time, every day. And that's just been so helpful.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's great. That's great. Yeah, it is a lot of, I mean, that's why I do this. It's a lot of input needs to go into the brain, a lot of reminding, a lot
Yeah.
of, just taking something in and try to simulate it. But
Yeah.
it's really interesting how you just delete it and not get obsessed on it. I like that. That's the first time I heard that, but that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
Um, so you made some more connections, right, between like stress. What were some of the connections you made personally between, your migraines and let's say stress or emotions or
Yeah.
things like that?
Yeah, I think for me the big change was just realizing how I was doing life in general. Um, Part of my life is that like I'm a grandfather, I'm a father, I'm a son. Both my parents are still alive. I'm a sibling. And so I have all these relationships, and I think that just to really evaluate them and to see how I'm functioning, in all these relationships, did for me it did seem to come down to, a lot of these close relationships that still can bring stress that, you know, typically it's not like anybody's blown up at anybody or no, there's no crazy business, but just the kind of things where I just have to really evaluate and look at how I'm being, again, like fawning or people pleasing or trying to manage too many people's emotions. That just really had set, I think, a lot of pressure on my nervous system.
Mhm.
And then I do come from a very, like you'd say, my A scores are very high. My family of origin was a very stressful, traumatic place. And so I think a lot of the ways that I learned to cope later that aren't helpful now or cope back then. And so I feel that a lot of times when you say like teaching your brain safety, it's like I might be in the presence of one of my family members now. And even though it's a totally safe experience, in my mind, it's not because I have a lot of memories and a lot of baggage from just the truth of the way I was raised and the way I came up. It was a different time. And when you're a child, that's normal. You don't realize some of the dysfunction and some of the stuff that's happening. But trying to maintain relationships with people and not cut people out or yeah. So I've really noticed how a lot of times that I don't feel as safe as I should, and I can't quite put my finger on it. I know I've shared with you that sometimes I'll just be driving to a certain person's house, and in that moment, even driving up, I'll leave my house thinking I'm great and I'm fine, and I want to go see this person. And then as I'm driving up, I can just start to feel all this. I guess you could call it fear. It doesn't feel like traditional fear, but that's the only word I have. And I just feel like before I did this work, I wouldn't have even recognized that. So that's been helpful for me as I navigate relationships now.
Yeah, and that sort of fear would kick off a migraine or headache at times in the
For
past.
sure. It'd
Yeah.
be more later. It would be more, I'd do it, I'd sit in that space, I'd get a little bit stirred up and I'd leave. And then it would sort of like yeah, it would start to go in that direction. I'd start to ruminate, you know, I might get all my terms wrong, but you talk so much about reappraisal, cognitive reappraisal, I think. So just to truly really try and tell myself like, hey, like you're you're thinking of things that were from your childhood. You can like reappraise that and just say like, actually, you just spent an hour with that person and there's nothing to be afraid of or anything like that. So that's just so helpful instead of spinning off into that place that
Hmm.
my wife would call me the marlin on the line, meaning when, because she could just tell and I would think like, oh, like I'm good. And she's like, oh no, like you're,
You're right. So you're
you're,
being, again, that's being that personality, right? It's kind of
yeah,
shrugging things off. Oh, no, no problems, right? Like
yeah,
everything's good.
yeah.
But under the hood of the car, right, there was
Yes.
stuff percolating and
Yeah.
and the migraine was one of the things that came out. So she
Yeah.
mentioned this personality, right? So do you feel like you shifted in some ways the way you work with some of the relationships,
Yeah.
family relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's been through some of the work that you've shared about, certainly writing, journaling, doing the chair exercise where you imagine somebody in the chair and just being able to say the kind of things, we have these really complex relationships where I have so much anger, but also like I feel responsible to not hurt someone at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's just like a real pickle, right? Like there's some people that you would want to just go and just, you know, like a boss or something, be nothing but fury. But some people in your life where there's this mix of rage and tenderness, it can be very taxing on the whole system, I'd say, for me.
Yeah, that's the conflict.
Yeah.
That's usually when we get symptoms when we're conflicted, right?
Mm,
We
yeah.
have a strong emotion like anger, and then you have another emotion which is connection or love or tenderness.
Yeah.
The two of them are doing this, and you don't feel safe to express, right?
Yep.
So would you say in your case with the migraines and headaches that anger was one of the emotions? We talked about this, or pressure and anger that created some of these headaches.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And then the word I always come up with is that I would feel trapped. So, I would sit down with somebody and yeah, you just feel trapped. That's what I'd say. Could be whatever mix that is, but that was like a feeling. And yeah, like I couldn't express, or I would choose not to express what I'd want to, and they'd be talking to me as if everything is great. And yeah, I just feel trapped. And some of that, could be my people pleaser or my fawning.
Yes.
Um,
So trapped
and
is like the energy was trapped, right? So it was trapped
yeah,
in your head,
yeah,
but wanted to come out. And that's that fear, right? You said like
yeah,
because of what you learned as the people pleaser growing up. We
yep,
talked about, right, your nature and you were the good kid, right? Took
yep,
care of
yep,
everybody, the peacemaker.
yep,
So to speak it out would have been, like you said, like too disruptive, right? Or
yep,
to potentially to the relationship.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then you can end up with the symptoms. So yes, so you were able to work some of these things out. It sounds like, right, by expressing emotions privately,
Hmm.
journaling, empty
Hmm.
chair exercise, um, self-talk, right, using some cognitive reappraisal. You mentioned
Yeah.
looking at situations differently.
Yeah.
Um, great. Anything else that you found helpful? Audios, daily audios.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, one thing, I'm constantly referring people to your channel and your free YouTube videos. Dr. Howard Schubner has been very helpful for me. He has this workbook. It's like probably 280 pages. I think it's called Unlearn Your Pain. And that, again, I kind of did that like the daily audios where I just, I plopped it down on my desk. It probably took 4 months to get through. And I just slowly worked through it. And there were some things where I didn't quite understand what I was doing, but I just stayed committed to it. And that really just helped me to understand these complicated relationships.
Mhm.
He has some journaling exercises where you kind of make a circle and then do offshoots,
Yeah.
and then you follow wherever it takes you. And again, like it's really easy to know, I hate to use such strong words, but like the people we hate or the people we love, that's not complicated at all. But some of these relationships are just complicated. And so when you can write it out, you can so that was just very helpful for me, his book, in
Yeah,
a lot of
that's
ways.
great. And did you find, like, because obviously some of these relationships you're still connected to these people, right?
All
You
of
see
them.
them, you see
Yeah,
them
all of
every
them. Yeah.
day. Yeah, but at this point now you don't get these. Where are you at currently with migraines? You're not getting the frequency of the migraines anymore in these situations with people, or
Yeah, yeah, nowhere near, as I wanted to be upfront with you, I still do have symptoms. I wanted to be transparent.
right?
But I mean, I can't even begin to explain the difference of severity and duration and all the things that come with migraine. I was sharing, I don't think I've been bedridden with a migraine in like 6 to 8 months. And that used to be 6 or 7. Anyone that does struggle with migraines knows that it can be 7 or 8 days a month where you really just can't do anything.
Mm.
And so now, if I get symptoms, I could really just take like a Tylenol or two and I can just like get right through it. So the difference is just amazing. It's really almost miraculous. And it also has me very helpful for like where I'm headed. The trajectory has been so encouraging that I really do believe that there could be a day where I'm just done with them. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. But like
Yeah.
you said, the frequency, the intensity, the
Yeah.
duration of them are down
Completely different. Yeah.
significantly. Yeah,
Yeah.
more than
And
more.
even a lot of times it would be like there'd be, 6 or 7 at night where I'd be like, I think I have a headache coming on. And then you'd kind of spend 4 hours in fear and work through it. And then maybe it wouldn't come on. And like that just doesn't happen now. It's just a day without a headache now is a true day without a headache,
Mm.
and it's like 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 days in a row where it's like it's not even anything. And when I was getting 6 to 8 a month that would take me out, there was like 20 or 21 days that month where you would just be kind of fearful or avoiding the light or avoiding a food or being sound sensitive, all the different hypersensitivities that you've shared, like I had all of them, not, not one of my, I remember that I read Alan Gordon's great book, I think it's called The Way Out, and he talks about that he would sit down with a friend and his friend would look at him and say, "Oh, do we need to move your back?" And they'd have to move. And, my wife has been such a saint, like for going to restaurants for 20 years. It's always like, where's the light? Where's the sound? And that's just done now. Like we just walk into a restaurant, sit down and eat, and there's not all the hyper-vigilance and, all that kind of stuff, which I just didn't know even was a thing. I thought I was doing the best thing by like hyper protecting, and I had no concept of to not, to just kind of work through the light and those kind of things.
Yeah, the hypervigilance. So yeah,
Yeah.
you're speaking about fear, you're speaking about anger,
Hmm.
right? Personality traits, yeah, exposure training, right? And just
Hmm.
like understanding this, like you said, you didn't even
Yeah.
know, you thought you were doing the right thing,
Hmm.
right? Even with medications, you thought, well, that's all I
Yeah.
got, and you
Yeah.
realize first that wasn't the answer. So you got off those medications, which is a big
Yeah.
deal. And then you got into this work, and yeah, the changes have been amazing. It's been great to see you change so much since when
Yeah.
you started doing the work and to where you are now. So it's pretty awesome. Awesome to
Yeah.
see.
Thank you.
Yeah. What else do you want to share? Is there anything else you want to share with the audience in terms of like the process? It's been like you said,
Yeah.
about a year and a half since you've been doing it.
Yeah. I mean, my encouragement to others, I debated on coming on. I remember in my head, I'm like, well, I want to wait until I've got no more headaches, like I want to tell Jim, like, let's do this in 3 months, And I realized, the way I'd want to encourage people is just to really give yourself grace, like as you're going through this process. And I remember a year and a half ago, I would see success stories and people would say like, I still have this, I still have that, but I could never conceptualize what that meant. I just thought that, if you had a headache, like that was like not failure, but like you hadn't, there's nothing to talk about. And so, yeah, just to encourage people that just to be, like I say, like not perfection, but direction
Yeah.
and just to continue to, yeah, educate yourself, build on it. Again, I think people like us, like when we have, sometimes if I have a little setback, I'll tell my wife like, like nothing's working. It's no good. Like I'm right back where I started. And
Yeah.
she'll say, are you kidding me? Like it's so different.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so if I can encourage anybody that way, just to, yeah, give yourself grace, stick with the work. I think you always share that it probably clicks in differently for different people at different times.
Yeah.
And we all have such different backgrounds and we all have such different circumstances. Um, yeah, it's like, again, I think it's even just today you had said on the daily audio that, a lot of us don't live like really stressful lives anymore, but these things can still keep up. And so, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
the
like
past is like you mentioned before, the
yeah,
memories in the past, your ACE scores and things like that
yeah,
make one more prone to have the reactions, in environments
mhm,
and stuff. But you've done an amazing job, right, of shifting some of the personality, right, in
mhm,
relationships, connecting to your emotions more, right,
yeah,
expressing those emotions, reducing your fear, talking yourself off the cliff, right? So
yeah,
reappraisal. So you're doing all these great things to really shift your brain. And
yeah,
what's interesting, I wish we were able to take like the iPhone and scan your brain when we started and say, hey, look at it now, because I bet you your brain
yeah.
activity has shifted there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And even just on that note, like the analogy was a moral on a line, meaning that I would just go. And so I just know that I just haven't experienced that in months. Like I could look at it like it's someone else now, and I could be in a situation now where I could tell that like, oh, like 6 months ago, this would have felt like that. And now it just doesn't feel like that anymore. So
Mhm.
I'm sure I don't know a lot about brains, but I'm sure mine looks different.
Absolutely would look different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're kind of alluding to this idea that you hadn't go into all these secondary reactions anymore, right? So if you get you might go a little bit right, but your wife helps you and you probably correct yourself, say, okay, hang
Yeah.
on, take some grace here, self-compassion, right? It's
Yeah.
not the end of the world. We have upticks. Anybody can be triggered at any time. I can get stuff. Dr. Schubiner gets stuff still. We're human
Yeah.
beings.
Yeah.
But the way you handle it right now
Mhm.
is probably completely different than how you handled it before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Anything else you want to share with the audience in
Well,
terms of your journey and what you could offer to them? Because you did, I
yeah.
know you alluded a bit to the intensity. Like these were pretty bad, these
Mhm.
migraines. You had
Yeah.
20 plus year history of
Yeah.
migraines, that were there the same, right? Going on and getting worse over the
Yeah.
decades. So it's pretty serious at one point.
Yeah. Yeah. Just I'm sure as soon as we hang up, I'll probably think of 40 or 50 things I want to share. But yeah, just again, just positive mindset. Again, all reaffirm kind of the one of the main things I said, which is like there is no hack to this. Like, unfortunately, in our culture right now, it's all about the hack. You can go on to there's websites now that give you, 30-minute versions of 7-hour books, and it's like I would just encourage people just be patient with this and just do the work and don't get frustrated and yeah and that kind of that all the pieces are important. It's not like you have BEAT
Mhm.
and just to let them all sink in and I try and give them all equal weight,
Yeah.
and I just wake up and expectantly kind of hear what I'm going to hear and just really try and apply that to the day.
Yeah,
um
great. That's a good
you
point. It wasn't just like you alluded to, it wasn't just one thing, right, that
yeah
helped you. There's various pieces, and the BEAT is just an acronym I use, right, for
yeah
shifting some things like behaviors, emotions, the way you're attending, your thinking,
Mhm.
the way you talk to yourself. So you kind of used, all these different things and took them in at different levels. So the process has been sort of a gradual one, would you say? A gradual reduction of these
Mhm.
migraines over time. It wasn't like it just shut off one day, right? It was more of a
Mhm.
gradual
Yeah.
reduction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and just to give yourself patience, realize that so much like we all have so many ways of being before we learned about this work, and those don't just turn off. As you've said, I guess for some people it does shift in a dime, but certainly even just with knowing people in anything, not just mind body work, that all the things we've learned over time, it just takes also time to unlearn that kind of stuff. And that like life happens. You can't control what's going to come at you, what's going to be a trigger. If we're people that are in relationships, like we can't control what's going to happen there. And so just to give yourself grace for what situation may or may not come up,
Mhm.
because yeah, we don't get to control, right, everything that comes up in this.
No,
Nicole
no.
Sachs says life gets lifey.
Yeah, that's
And
right. Yeah, you don't, I mean, that limbic brain is it's
yeah,
so fast and protective and reactive and we can't. It's impossible. Like it's too fast. But by the time I don't know if you ever experienced this. I've had with my pain where I've just thought about one thing or thought
Mm,
about the pain. I'd be able to turn it on in a second, like faster than I could even see it
yeah,
happening. And next thing you know, it's there, right? So
yeah,
it's can be very rapid. But then how you handle it is really,
yeah,
really key, and that sort of response to it.
yeah.
So great stuff, Tom. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. Migraines are nothing to sneeze at. Like they're debilitating for people, like you said, to be down and out for a day or days.
Mhm.
So it's no small feat. So you've proven it that hey, this can work,
Mhm.
right? For the people who are just starting their journey, like
Yeah,
yes, this is the real deal. Like your mind, your brain, your nervous system can absolutely cause these things and cure these things at the same time.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes. All right.
awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on and
Thanks.
sharing. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, awesome.